Awesome. Looks like we've got YouTube going.
And then record. There we go.
Awesome.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Feels like you're in it. Look like you're in a sweater. Is it cooling off? Are you starting to get some cool fall mornings?
We did last week. This week's actually been warmer and really humid. We've gotten a bunch of rain and storms, but I had the air on last night, so it's still a little cool in my house,
chilly.
But it's probably pretty humid and gross outside.
Yeah. Well, I'm certainly looking forward to some fall weather.
Yes. Last week was like a big teaser for us in the mornings.
Right? Yeah. Some of the trees are starting to lose their leaves around here a little bit.
Yes, I noticed that last night too. We had a pretty big thunderstorm and the wind picked up and I saw like leaves blowing around and I was like, one
Fall
step
is coming.
Yes.
Fall is
Yes.
coming. So wonderful. Well, we have been talking around stories and the stories that we tell ourselves in the absence of real information. And sometimes they support us, and sometimes they're true, and sometimes they're not. Sometimes are. So I was thinking about this last night and kind of looking forward to our time today. And I kind of wanted to start with a metaphor. I don't always have them right up front, but this one came to me last night. Have you ever had been working out in the yard and you just have like sand or dirt, maybe in your garden, you just plant, got your garden bed full of fresh dirt and it's all nice and it looks nice and flat to you, and then you start pouring some water in and the water makes little pathways for it. And, it just makes these little tunnels and starts going down these little paths. And we know water is going to take the path of least resistance, right? It's like, why, what's there? Is there a little slope in it? Is the ground softer there? But the water is just going to take that course. And I feel like that's kind of where those stories go. The stories kind of come from that they're just going to kind of make their own path, their own, and unfortunately, and you tell me if you think this resonates with you or or the clients that you've worked with, but generally the stories in our stories, we're not the hero. I'm speaking, like for me and my stories that I tell myself, I'm not the hero. I'm not the good guy. I'm usually in my stories the one that's done something wrong, that's made a mistake, that's, I what did I say? What did I do? And I just kind of blow that up and walk down that road of this must have been really hurtful or offensive or misinterpreted, and assume the worst of myself. Let's put it that way. Assume the worst. So because I feel like that's the path of least resistance. Does that sound?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, spot on for me, for sure. And yeah, I absolutely hear that from my clients as well. I mean, our stories are typically never empowering for us.
Right. Right.
They're not, like you said, we're not the hero. There's also like typically this sense of like lack of control. Like in our stories, we're not like in control and proactive. It's more like we're not in control and we're reacting to a certain situation, typically reacting pretty desperately. That's where the stories start to kind of get
Right.
a little wild.
And how often in those stories do we paint ourselves in a position of feeling powerless?
Absolutely.
You know, and maybe we're not
Right.
powerless. Maybe we actually have more agency or more abilities than but because we're just wrapped up in that story in our own mind, that's all the information that we have.
Yeah.
So today I thought we've talked about that. I kind of wanted to make a turn and shift a little bit. And how do we come out of that? How do we change that? Because this is all supposed to be about empowering women. How do we fill in the blanks with real information? How do we get back to a place of empowerment?
Yeah. So, like you were saying, our stories tend to come from a place of lack of information. So, flipping that is pretty self-explanatory, right? Like having the information would put us in a position to not create these stories or feel like we have to create some sort of a story or an explanation. So yeah, having that information, which again, it sounds easy enough, but that
Right.
can be a tough task.
Yeah. And well, right, because if I buy that information that I'm telling myself, I'm making a choice. I'm either going to stay in that position. I'm either going to stay in that place of not believing this and putting myself down, or I'm going to find out what's real and find out real information. And the solution to that is asking hard questions. Is asking hard questions. And as you know, most of the people that I work with are trauma survivors. And that's hard. Trauma survivors don't feel empowered or safe asking hard questions. So I think before we go there, and I think this is true for in any relationship or in any situation, is asking yourself some questions. Is this a relationship where I want to invest in myself to ask these questions? Because I'm going to have to expose myself a little bit to get this information. I'm going to have to be vulnerable, at least a little bit to get this information. And is this worth it? Is this a relationship where I want to make that investment? And take that risk of asking hard questions. what level of trust do I have in this person? That, is it worth that risk? Or am I better off? What's going to support me and serve me the most in this moment?
I think one step before that too, which like I hadn't really considered before until you started talking about asking internal questions to begin with and trust. I think, and again, you can let me know if this resonates with you or if you see this with clients as well. But I think sometimes there's, I guess, maybe a lack of trust in ourselves and a lack of awareness that there's even stories happening to begin with.
Right.
So you were talking about asking ourselves some hard questions to start before we start asking others hard questions. And I think, I think that kind of ties in like one step before, like asking ourselves some hard questions to see if the story that we're telling ourselves is even a story or not. You know what I mean? Like we were talking about having the lack of information and finding the truth. And sometimes we're so invested in that story being truth that we don't even start to move on to those other steps.
Right. Oh yeah. Yeah. So being aware that we're telling ourselves that story, is definitely so if we wanted to help someone be able to recognize those stories, what are some clues they could look for?
A big one that comes to mind for me is like shifts in your energy and how you feel, because we talked about stories being heavy in like us being kind of like the wrong one or the one who did something wrong or like lacking control over the situation and that sort of thing. And you can get that general idea if you start kind of spinning out and creating this whole story around something. Like you can tell if you're which way your energy is going. Obviously, if you're telling yourself a supportive, empowering story, you're going to feel very different than if you're telling yourself this type of story. So that's kind of like one big clue that comes up in mind for me.
Yeah. And it may result in, if we're not really in touch with our feelings, maybe our behavior. If we go from being lighthearted, laughing, engaging, something said, the story starts to unfold in my mind, and then I just withdraw and shut down, and I stop talking and just get real quiet. Then it's like, there's a coil. It's because I may not be thinking in terms of my energy shifting, but my behavior's just changed significantly.
Yeah, I really like that too, because I'm sure we've talked about it before, but we certainly talk about it with our clients, that thoughts create feelings, which create actions and behaviors. And like you said, everyone could be slightly, it's not like this, then this, then this all the time. A certain person could be really in tune to their thoughts. Another might be really in tune to their actions and behaviors. And so, or your emotions. So,
right.
Kind of being able to connect with a certain part of that timeline that you best connect with, and then sort of working backwards. Well, if my actions and my behaviors are really off, well, then, what are my feelings that are creating that? What are the thoughts that are creating those feelings? That sort of thing. But it doesn't have to be, it's not strict that it's an order of, thoughts and feelings and actions. You can kind of pick up different points in that process, and then, work backwards to kind of really dig in.
Right. Yeah. So if you're around a person who's supportive and safe, and all of a sudden they say to you, "Are you okay?" You may go, they've noticed a change. What's what's going on? And that may be an external clue. Whether I have, or we've been aware of that, internally to that point or not. If we're just completely engrossed in that work of fiction that we're creating in our mind, we may not even really be aware that our behavior and our attitude or our affect has changed. It may just be, that kind of that piercing arrow from outside that's like, oh, wait, maybe I need to kind of take a breath and why are other people around me now asking if I'm okay?
Yeah. So really being open to noticing the clues that are coming from within, coming internally, but also any clues that might be coming up externally.
Right.
It makes me think of, as you were talking, about, just like a hypothetical situation of someone noticing something off with you. Oftentimes, especially as women, I feel like, but it could be with anybody, but I feel like our go-to is like, no, I'm fine.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
No, what? I'm fine. It's that I'm fine.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
You could, be having all kinds of stuff going on internally. And you're like, no, I'm fine.
Right.
But, that goes along with being the vulnerability of it, right? Being vulnerable, being open to exploring these clues that are coming from outside. And also, like you said, it definitely makes a difference when it's with someone that you really trust.
Right. And that's what I was just thinking, in working with trauma survivors, one of the things that I try to help, one of the first places that we go is kind of establishing those safety zones, establishing who's a safe person for you to share those pieces of you with. Who can I share those pieces of me with that is going to hold them carefully and not throw them at me? And that's going to be different. It's not a straight line.
Right.
I have girlfriends that I can share things with. I have other friends that I can share things with. Some things I can share with my kids, and some things I can't. It's really kind of a matter of identifying who those people are that are going to value things in a way that's similar to the way that I'm going to value this. If I'm talking to a girlfriend and I'm sharing parts of a traumatic situation, I need to know that she's going to value that in the same way that I do. She's going to hold it for me. And that becomes a person that I can take input from.
Right.
Around that,
Right.
So, I think that's a really big part of kind of like establishing who those relationships are that are safe, and have the value to go work through the story, to go back to that person and say, okay, this is what I heard, and this is the story that I created around it. How true is that? And chances are in that space, the person is going to go, okay, I remember that event, but now let me tell you the story I created in my mind around it. Because chances are they're not going to make themselves the hero in the story.
Right.
Any more than I am.
Right.
Okay. So if their water is going to run downhill as easily as mine and find that path of least resistance, and in their mind, they have their own stuff that they've been working on and trying to heal and recover from. They're gonna create a story around it just like I do. And when we both put it on the table, then we have vulnerability, we have intimacy, we have caring, and we have connection.
I think sometimes that can be a powerful way of looking at it before a story even manifests into something huge, especially if it's someone that you're close with and that you trust. Because sometimes our stories can, I don't know, sometimes our stories like disregard things that we do know sometimes. Like, it could be with a person that you know really well and that you trust, and that is one of those like safety zone people, and it's still our mind and our insecurities and doubt and things like that start to formulate the story. And sometimes before a story even gets big, we can really stop ourselves and say, like, wait a minute, I know this person.
Right.
How would they perceive the same situation?
Right.
They're probably creating a story too, where they're a victim just like me. And again, sometimes that can be a powerful tool before a story really even gets out of control.
Yeah. Right. So, again, when we've had toxic or abusive relationships, it's very easy to continue to apply that filter to future relationships, and to other people who haven't earned it. Right. So when you can take a breath and go, wait a minute, this person doesn't treat me that way, or doesn't think this of me. This person now that's in my life now is for me and wants good for me. Where the abusive person did not. So, when I can just clarify that much in my mind, and it's like, okay, that can just kind of be like taking the eraser and just taking all that stuff off the board.
Yeah.
Just getting clarity around who we're talking about.
Yeah.
Just the lenses and yeah, this, wait, because we get in those, we talk a lot about mindset, but it's difficult to change a mindset that runs really deep. And coming out of an abusive relationship or having suffered, a traumatic abuse, those shifts are hard. They don't come easy. Those things don't die. They don't die easy.
Yeah. It's definitely a lot of work.
It is. So what is so we've kind of going back and recapping, we've talked about just being aware of the shift in our energy, and how we're feeling, or becoming aware of our behaviors. I tend to shut down and get quiet. Before I did my trauma work, I would get angry. So that, my response to those stories has changed.
Yeah.
Before I would get angry, I felt empowered when I could get angry and it was, trying to fight back and trying to make a place for myself because, I was being pushed down and belittled in an abusive relationship. And I remember very clearly, when that shifted, and I was still involved in that abusive relationship, but the one day that I didn't get angry and yell, I started crying. I was like, wait, and he didn't know what to do with that. He didn't know how to, because my anger was familiar. But my energy had shifted. I had started doing that work and was connecting to the things that you're saying, and the things that you're doing to me are hurting. And I'm now feeling that primary emotion rather than the secondary emotion.
Right.
So I started crying. And it was like, it changed the rules.
Yeah.
It changed the rules. And that was a really important step for me in being able to remove myself from that toxic, that abusive relationship. Was recognizing, I'm feeling the pain. Because when I responded in anger, I just had this shield up, and it contributed to the toxicity, and it contributed to just the nastiness in the relationship. But when I started feeling the pain that was being inflicted, that was coming, that was where I started to find real. That's where I started to find it was okay. So my metaphors. It was like walking in a dark cave where I couldn't see, and I couldn't see, and I was just hitting walls. And in that moment when I started crying and didn't react in anger, it was like there was just this tiniest glimmer of light.
Mm.
And I saw a crack between the rocks, like maybe there's a way out over there.
Mm.
Maybe if I walk towards that light, there's going to be a narrow path that I can get out of this and away from this abuse and away from this pain.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like anger is just kind of a mask, right?
It is. Yeah.
But really feeling and being vulnerable is where we can build awareness, right?
Right. Yeah.
And only with awareness can you begin to create change.
Exactly. Yeah. That's so
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
How are you doing on time?
I'm all right. But we can start to wrap it up here.
Yeah. So what are some questions? What are some questions if we've decided that this is a relationship where I can risk and I can be vulnerable?
I think I really liked, as simply as you put it, this is how I saw, either the situation or the conversation, whatever it was, this is how I saw it. And this is the story that I created around it.
Mm-hmm.
One, just being vulnerable in laying that on the table, and then
Right.
asking for their thoughts around it, asking how they saw the situation, asking what story they created around it. Because like you said, chances are, they created their own whole
Right.
story where, they're the victim or the one that was hurt or whatever, just like you were. So I think just being open and being open about what your experience was, and then asking them what their experience was.
What about, exactly. Yeah. What about saying, are you interested in hearing about the story that I created, or hearing about what was going on? And what are you interested in hearing what came up for me around this?
Yeah.
Because that puts them at choice of saying, and that's another clue when we ask that, do you even want to hear this? That's kind of an investigatory question around, it helps us just, we're not just jumping in and making an assumption that they want to hear it.
Yeah.
Right. And it's gonna give us a clue if they're in a space in that moment. Maybe they do, but right now they're not ready. It's not a good time.
Yeah.
Are you interested in what came up for me around this? And they're going to go yes or no. It's putting them at choice. And that's going to give you a clue if you are, kind of like you're going to get a red light, green light, or yellow. Yeah, maybe, but right now I'm doing this and this, and I've got my mind on this, and I'm not, can we talk about it later? There's your yellow light.
Yeah.
We were both there. We saw what happened. No, red light. This is not a vulnerability that I want to pursue.
Yeah.
Absolutely. very interested in what came up for you. There's your flashing green light.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that that's a great way to approach it, because I also feel like in that scenario, you're respecting yourself, you're opening up,
Right.
you're being vulnerable. Yeah, you're building that trust with yourself. But at the same point, you're offering the other person in the situation that same respect and that
Right.
same opportunity. And, like you said, they may or may not be ready to talk about it. They may still be processing their own story. Might not be a great time to get into it for them, or maybe they're not willing to at all. And, that's okay too. I mean, they have that choice. Yes. But I think that, the way that you prompted that really offers everyone in the situation to be respected.
Yeah. Well, and it, I was just looking at my notes, and it helps each person in the situation to feel like they have agency or control. And we tend to assume we have no control.
Right. Which is where a lot of those stories
they come from.
Stem from, right. That lack of control, that need to explain something or find truth, or so this also gives you that sense of control in a healthier way.
And respecting the other person's,
yeah, absolutely.
So
absolutely.
Always love our talks.
Yes.
Always love our chats. So
yes.
Any final words you want to throw in here before we wrap it up?
I think, as always, just start within, build some connection internally, and really start to connect with yourself and listen to yourself.
Yeah, I was just thinking, one of my favorite things to say is be kind to yourself. Just be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
So, we're very quick to want to be kind to other people. But how kind are we to ourselves? So, and as always, Jess is a professional coach. I am a professional coach. If anyone is hearing this and any of these things resonate with them, Jess works with young moms. And I work with trauma victims, trauma survivors. So if any of these things are resonating with you and you want to reach out to either of us, please feel free to do so. We're here to love and support you.
Yes, absolutely.
So, well, thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.
Next week I will be traveling, so we're gonna try to overcome technical difficulties on the road. See how that works. So anyway, thank you, and I hope you have a beautiful day.
You as well.
Let me end the recording.